I would like to start from your beginning at your career. Where did you live? Where did you study? And eventually, how did you end up working at NASA? It has been many years now. So yeah, a little bit of an intro about yourself. Why you decided to get into technology? Where did you study and lived in the early years? And how it happened that you joined NASA?
I grew up in Texas, in Houston, Texas. So I'm a born and raised Texan. I moved to DC area about 5 years ago. So most of my life I've been living in the Houston area. Grew up following, of course, all the sports teams there, the Houston team. So I'm a diehard Astros fan. So definitely, that's kind of where my passion lies as far as from a sports area to it. But as I was growing up, I've always been interested in technology. I've always been interested in how things work, in finding solutions to things. I grew up, of course, with the era of Pong and Atari and some of those other ColecoVisions. For folks that may remember those things, a lot of the younger generation probably won't remember those. But I was always interested in how those things work, how you can create those types of games, how you can do things. So I guess I was one of the initial gamers growing up, but totally a lot different than what you see nowadays. Went to school, University of Houston, in an engineering technology type of degree. Back then, computer science was not a degree that was formalized when I started college, at least at University of Houston. I did see some programs coming up. You're looking at computer programs, primarily COBOL, back then in Fortran, but took some courses in that. I actually, after my college time, I actually went into finance for about 7-8 years. But even during that time frame, I was doing a lot of work developing algorithms and models and taking a look at how can I understand the market, how can I understand times to buy, types to sell, things like that. It really was more interesting to me, the development of those algorithms and the development of those models. So that pushed me back to looking more towards computers and seeing how they work and how they develop. After my time in finance, I worked in a small nonprofit organization, just trying to get an understanding of business better, understanding what's going on. And again, I was developing the technology behind that small business, that small nonprofit organization. I set up the computer systems, I set up the databases, really started to get me more intrigued on that. So I started thinking more about going into a technology field or computer field. At that time, my sister was working for a contractor of NASA down in the Houston area. She was able to get me into a position where I was actually starting off as a IT tech. I worked for about a year as an IT tech there at NASA Johnson Space Center, doing everything, setting up computers, running cable, setting up printers. Ended up started doing more and more of the support for the higher executives. I was kind of marked as the group that went out to look at their nurse needs and services that they required. I did that for about a year, and I ended up landing a job as a database administrator for the neutral buoyancy lab at Johnson Space Center. Did that there for a year when they asked me to continue doing the database administration, but they wanted me to set up and run their IT, basically their IT shop. It was a small shop, about 4 of us. So we ended up setting up 300 computers, various servers ran at that time, which was running the network, making sure it was all set up properly. And that's kind of where I started getting more interest in a little bit everything around the IT side. So I was implementing or installing computers and tech and other hardware, but I also started developing applications and programs for the neutral buoyancy lab for the users there. And that then led me and I was as a contractor. After about 6 years there, I landed a job as a IT tech. Actually, as an IT computer information technology specialist within the Information Resources Directorate at JSC. That was 2006 when I started there. And I was a workstation engineer overseeing with another person overseeing at that time we had close to 18,000 computers across JSC with civil servants and contractors, making sure they were, managed right, security, the particular loads that were there. I then went on to do some IT project management, where I started really getting more interested in processes and in how things are done, which led me to a certification in Lean Six Sigma. The Six Sigma side of that is more around analytics and variance and looking at things. Ended up with a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma there at Johnson Space Center. But during that time frame, I realized that I wanted to do more analysis, more work around that. So I went back to school, got a master's in engineering management with basically a minor in statistics, and I started doing more of the analysis. Went over to the knowledge management group, which was managing the Lean Six Sigma program at JSC at that time, and I kind of became their liaison between technology and what we're trying to do in knowledge management and Lean Six Sigma. And I started working on a framework that I called knowledge architecture at that time. And it's a combination of data science, informatics, and knowledge management to manage how we try to extract actionable knowledge out of our data. Where knowledge management is a strategy for how we store, analyze, present our data. Informatics is the pipeline that moves the data from one place to the other. And then the data science is the algorithms and models we use to turn that data into some type of actionable knowledge. So, but that got me thinking about how do we actually use that information? How does that information disseminate across to other individuals? I decided to go back again to school and work on a doctorate in education to really understand the concepts around how people receive information, how we disseminate information, and what are the basic different ways we can utilize those types of concepts to make sure that our data is transferable to other individuals and we keep it and share it and able to use it across time. And that's not just for that one point in time. So those are the kind of things that I was doing there. And eventually that organization that I developed while I was at JSC in their knowledge architecture, I became the chief knowledge architect for JSC, managing that across JSC. Eventually, around 2018, I was asked to do a detail up at OCIO at headquarters. I was the program executive for information management. I did that for about a year, and then I decided to accept a position as a senior data scientist within the office of the chief human capital officer. That was in 2019. And since that time, I've kind of moved up the ranks there, and I'm currently the head of analytics for human capital, as well as the branch chief for people analytics within human capital at NASA.
What a career. A lot of study, a lot of... I think it's very interesting how you framed all your experience, because many times people don't understand how someone starts here and ends up here. And it's good how you have shared all the studying that you have done, how you came back, study, educate yourself, going back and starting something else, being curious, understanding what's going on, updating your skills, reskilling, skilling up, and all those things. I think it's great for someone to understand how, for someone that it's young and it's just starting your career, all the things that needs to happen in order for someone to grow in their careers. And something that I would like to ask, and probably we will jump on this a little bit later, is how was the process of getting your first contract from a hiring point of view? How was your process when you first joined NASA as a contractor, and how it is different today with all the different things that are going on nowadays?
Yeah, I think when I first started back with NASA as a contract, this is 1999, when I took my first position as a computer tech with the contract. A lot of that, of course, was, again, my sister was fortunate to work for the company, put in a good word for me. So like anything else, it was somebody, that helped you get to that position. And that still is, a good way of getting. You got to have a network out there of individuals that can help you, give you references, provide information, give you some context. So that's always helpful. How it's changed the processes themselves. When I first started as a civil servant, of course, the government has a government-wide platform to utilize to apply for a government position called USA Jobs, where you look for and fly. So just getting into that, it's understanding the processes, it's a little difficult on the government side. What kind of resumes that you put in there? How much information do you put? How do you make sure that you can meet the qualifications and the keywords or the things that they're looking for in those jobs, so those key phrases they're looking for. How do you make sure you capture all of that within your resume to be able to at least get past the certification process? Because that's one of the first things that needs to happen is your qualifications have to be certified that, yes, we believe that what you've posted in here meets the criteria that we put into the job description. Then you go in there and try to make sure that you're vetted against that. And then a lot of that process is difficult within the government only because we get a lot of applicants. So that's the hardest part back then, of course, is still trying to filter through all of those applicants. And for a hiring manager, that means reading all of the resumes and comparing that against your job requirements. That's still there today, but there are things we can do nowadays that maybe provide a little bit of support or ease for that hiring manager. Of course, there was always, find the control find type of capability, searching for keywords. But now with the advent of or the ability of using, natural language processing and now large language models, we can definitely get closer to saying this criteria we're looking for, this competency or this information we're looking for. We can find it in various resumes and at least pull out those resumes that answer those questions. There's still some moral, legal, and ethical things we have to think about how we run these things, but there's always a human in the loop to make sure we're doing things properly. So it's how have they changed over the years? I think the technology, the capabilities have made it easier for us to at least sift through the information, but it's still a lot of human work that's involved in trying to hire somebody.
Great. And now, yes, I want to jump into what you are currently doing. That it's, of course, how you are using natural language processing to build tools to be able to certify the resumes. Of course, you're working on a specific project that it's how we came across you through YouTube. So it would be great if you can tell us a little bit about that project, the scope of the project. We are not gonna get too technical because if not, it's going to take a lot of time as well. There's already information about that on YouTube, so people can then go there and see those videos that are there. But yeah, for someone that could be someone that it's a technical person that will understand the language, but also for people that are in a more executive positions, that they understand that building teams, it's important, and bringing the right team on board, it's important. How NASA is using technology to be able to go through all this process in a more efficient way by leveraging technology. So that will be the idea of the scope of the project, how you are using specific things like natural language processing, and how that is part of the current hiring process of NASA.
So the project you're mentioning, you're talking about here, is something that I call KSAT, KSATT, knowledge, skills, abilities, tasks, and technology. So to put this into context a little bit, back in 2019, when I first joined the Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer, one of the items I was asked to look at is, do we have the right skill sets in our workforce to get us back to the moon and onto Mars? Can we identify, is there a mechanism or a methodology or something we can do to try to make sure that the skill sets that our employees have match what our jobs need, and vice versa? Do we have the right people for that, for those jobs? So I started thinking through this problem, trying to figure out what's the best way to really connect those two different things, the jobs, the occupations, and the people together to be able to find relationships, patterns, or similarities across the two. So at that time, I had been working with graph databases for about 7-8 years. I had done some graph database kind of development around findability of documents, utilizing topic modeling to search through documents. So I figured this is also a graph problem in my mind. We're trying to connect or relate, to find a relationship between one entity, occupations, into another entity, which is the employees. But I needed to find a base. How could I start with this? So after some research, I found various databases out there with occupations and the elements that make up those occupations. One such database is owned by the Department of Labor. There's another one called ESCO out of the European Skills and Competencies group that has similar things. And I use ONET to basically be the foundation for my graph database. So each occupation, well, let me back up a little bit. So to just give the listeners here, if they don't understand graph databases, you have a node or an entity, which is, think of it as a person, place, or thing that's related to another person. So that relationship or an edge connects the two together. So I, myself, as an employee of NASA, as a supervisor, as a person, I am one node. And I have a job as a data scientist. That data scientist is another node. And I'm related to that job by how long I've done that job, what kind of skill sets I have, what kind of projects I've done, who I've done it for. All of those things are properties that connect the two nodes together. So taking that ONET database, which has about 2,200 occupations, I think, listed in there with various elements that make up that occupation. And those elements consist of a wide variety of things, but for my use, they have knowledge, skills, abilities, tasks, technologies, certifications, licensings, and a lot of other different elements. I took that entire database and I turned it into a graph model. And that graph model now allows me to relate elements to an occupation. Well, those same elements, knowledge, skills, abilities, tasks, and technologies, can be found in an individual. I have a knowledge of a certain thing. I have a knowledge of data science. And with that, I have a skill of being able to utilize natural language processing. And I can show you that skill by doing some tasks or activities such as document similarity or developing inference or various different things or parts of speech tagging, things like that. Those types of things are also found in occupation. So now I can relate the two together. Well, the third thing around that is training. Training also has those same similar elements. If you take a training course, a class in a university, you read a book or take a course somewhere, you're going to gain some knowledge. And with that knowledge, you're going to definitely start increasing your skill. And you're increasing that skill and that particular knowledge by running a bunch of exercises or tasks or activities during that course. So now I've got three things connected in a database. So my data model consists of an occupation, a person, and training. And they are all related by those various elements. Now, utilizing those elements and other properties that are associated in there, I could infer against an individual what skill sets they may have by looking at their resume, their LinkedIn profile, papers they may have written, anything else, because I'm able to use that to infer it against a document similarity model that was created against the occupations to be able to find those various elements that may be close to each other. So as an individual, my resume talks a little bit about data science, web development, SQL admin, things like that. Those could be tied to specific elements within an occupation, and it could show you that I'm pretty close to a data scientist or a SQL DBA or something like that. So now I can start running queries against that database. Find me individuals that have these competencies. Okay, and we have to still add other features, and this is where we get into the technical of how we add assessments and ratings and other values in there. But you can add those properties in there to fine tune your query. Find me somebody that has this competency at a level of whatever you set your scale at, let's say 1 to 100, at a 90%, that has been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years. All of those things could be added into your query to then find those people that match your need as good as possible. But what we found out of that is you can do other things too. Not only can you find people, I as an individual, if I wanted to change my career for some reason, I really wanted to target another occupation or another level of what I want to do, I can go find and use this same database to query that occupation, compare it against my skill sets to see what do I have. Then it tells me what do I need. Then I can query the training side of that to say, okay, if I want to learn more about what I need, what courses do I need to take or what should I do? So all of those things come together to allow you to do a lot of things from career modeling to training paths, career paths, a lot of different things within the human capital realms.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Something I wanted to ask you that we talked before is, it helps a lot, but when you have a job, you need to understand what's the purpose of that job and what objectives will have, what goals it will have that job to achieve them and provide value in some way, putting people in Mars, the moon again, or whatever. And for that, you need to define the job description. How is this helping people at NASA, hiring managers at NASA, to define those job descriptions?
We were fortunate. I mean, we already kind of had a system available for us to do so that was in development that I leveraged within this project here. We have something called JET, or Job Evaluation Tool, that was created by a team of another team of IO psychologists as well as some technical folks to identify those various competencies and skills that are necessary for a particular job classification within NASA. So specifically within NASA. And they've taken each job and done a job assessment and identified these are the skills that are competencies that we need. And then this tool, this job evaluation tool, was developed in order to say, if I'm looking for this occupation with this type of criteria, here are the different competencies I need, the high-level competencies, and then I can add the various different tasks within that competency that I expect them to do. I need somebody that has good data science skills. Well, one of the data science skills, I also need somebody that can do natural language processing. Or I need a specific capability to run statistical analysis of various kinds, whether it's more around, you could fine tune it to market basket or market analysis, or you can look at more somebody that's trying to do an evaluation of an individual or do an analysis across some kind of engineering project. But all of those things are available within our job evaluation tool to fine tune that, and that can be added as a job profile within the KSAT database. So now I have a job profile that I can add to that. And that job profile will allow me to find not only particular occupations that may meet that, but also the people that may meet those occupations. So now I've added another piece of this huge knowledge graph that allows me to really narrow down a specific question, depending on what that question is, from different groups.
That's great. And this, of course, is for NASA. And when applicants are applying to specific jobs at NASA or any other organization of the federal government, are applying with their resumes. The ones they have, the ones they have written, good enough, not good enough. So that's not something that this project it's under the scope. When a candidate applies, how is the process of going through the resume? You have mentioned going through a certification, and how the process keeps going.
So when you apply for a government position, you go to usajobs.gov. In that's where all government agencies will post their announcements, job announcements. Now that is managed throughout of the OPM, and they handle the system itself, the platform, and the ingestion of all the information. They have a mechanism built in the back end that looks at those looks at those resumes, and they have in their process, their workflow will take a look at what the requirement was set within the job announcement. How does that compare to the information given to us by the applicant? And do we feel that based on that information, it matches or meets at least the minimum requirements of that announcement? So that's kind of a black box to me as far as how they do it and what they do it. But it comes back with yes, this applicant certifies in the sense that they meet the minimum requirements for this occupation, for this announcement. I'm sorry. Then it goes back to the hiring manager. It goes back to the agency that submitted it. So that all of those certifications, all those individuals that certed, what we call certed or past certification, their resumes get forwarded over to the agency that requested the announcement. In this case, let's say it's NASA. Then our HR staff will look at these to make sure they qualify based on other criteria. So it depending on the grade level, there's a GS grade level 1 through 15. Depending on the grade level, depending on other criteria, will that individual qualify for what we're looking for? So a simple thing would be, or an easy way to explain that, let's say it's a GS 14 position, which is that out of 1 through 15 is the second to highest position. That's going to require somebody with probably about 10 years of experience, within what they're doing. So if somebody's fresh out of college trying to apply for a GS-14 position, they're going to, no, I'm sorry, you don't qualify because you don't have 10 years of experience. Those will then get notified that you don't meet the qualifications for this position, and apply for different ones. Or you'll get notice that you qualify, and then you may be referred to the hiring manager. Once they pass the qualifications, then they get referred to the hiring manager. Then the hiring manager does the hard work of reading through all those resumes to try to figure out who do they want to interview. Some of these positions will take, we can get 4,000, 5,000 applicants, depending on the position, because it may be a nationwide search for what we're looking for. So there's a lot of resumes to go through. And in the past, you have to do a lot of reading.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, if the applicant is a graduate and won't have those 10 years experience, it's quite easy to assess that. Of course, if you have 4,000 applications, it's going to take a lot of time. If you're using this system, then it's going to be quite easy because it will be able to identify that, and it will put aside all the applications that are not qualified. How is this system helping to go and find those more not so easy things to find from a resume? You mentioned ONET, and it has all the capabilities, all the leadership in all the different ways it could be leadership. How is the system understanding if the person really has, for example, these leadership skills or this knowledge in data science or whatever it is? If it's more technical, if it's more about interpersonal skills, how is this system working on those aspects?
So when I started this project in 2019, of course, large language models were not around, or not, at least they were around, but they weren't, publicly available at that time. So what I did was we use natural language processing, in this case, word similarity or document similarity, using an algorithm called doc2vec. Short answer to that, it looks at a document, and that document could be an entire 10-page Word document, or it could be a paragraph or a sentence within it, or a section. So in this case, I was looking at various sentences and trying to figure out this one sentence, how similar is this sentence to another based on its vector similarity. So how did I set that up? I took the information out of ONET. Now, ONET gave me all this information about knowledge, skills, abilities, tasks, and technologies. It had a description for all of those. It defined what knowledge it was, what you did for the skill, what you did for the activity, what kind of technologies were used. I took all of that information and I trained a doc2vec model with that information to try to help use that to identify skill sets within an individual. So now I can take an individual's information, a resume, I can scrape their LinkedIn profile with permission. I can look at things they may have published and things they've written about. Take all of that, and it will look at that information and say, how similar is that to an element within the occupation? So, for example, let's say one of the elements is the ability to develop statistical models to check for variance or check for mean, or something to that degree. Just to develop a statistical model to compare two different observations. In my resume, if I don't have to necessarily actually say those words, I can say something like, in one of my projects, I was asked to run analysis against various data sets to see whether they were statistically significant or not compared to other observations. That should be enough to say this is similar enough to what we're looking for, and it will rank the rating of it. How similar is it on a scale of 0 to 1? And then we can rank those that this is highly similar, moderately similar, or not similar, or just very similarity is much less than that. So that will allow us to rank the similarity ratings of each resume against what we're looking for, and hopefully start to at least put the resumes into an order we may want to read through. And so that gives us that kind of gives us a better starting point rather than just picking the first one off the list. It gives us an ability to look at those that may be a more highly connected to what we're looking for.
How are you measuring if the progress of how this is helping all the different agencies, specifically NASA, if it's working or not?
Well, we're still kind of in development of a lot of this. We're still working through some of that, primarily because, again, of our keeping an eye on that ethical and legal, issues we have to go through a very slow process to make sure. But part of it is going back to the supervisor and going back to the employee. Can you tell us, based on what we knew about you, this is what we believe your top 5 skills are? Can you tell, are we correct, or is there something we're missing? And then they'll rank whether we measured it correctly or not. Same thing with the supervisor. Supervisor, can you tell us, do you see these skills in your employee, and rank them? And then we'll compare the two to see how similar they are, to try to identify, to find that out. And that helps us to figure out, one, whether they have it or not, or they say they have it. But then we still have to figure out to what level they may have it. And then again, how relevant is that to what we're looking for. Being able to program is one thing, but if the requirement is to be able to program in Python or Java, and Fortran or Pascal or something else, that may not be what we're looking for. You could learn the other languages, but we may pay more priority to somebody that already has that language we're looking for.
That's a very good starting point to a question I will ask you now. So we at Pitcheers, we help companies to hire, and many times they come with the requirements for software engineers, and they ask as a requirement someone who is working as a senior software engineer, working with Java, being involved in everything that it's putting things into production, being part of the team to help design the solution, because it's a small company, so you might not have a full-time architect, and so on. And this person is using, let's say, .NET, C#, doesn't have Java, but has experience with the industry, it has experience putting things into production, doing CI/CD, using, let's say, AWS, if they're using AWS, but it's Java. It's not C#, and the person has C# experience. And C# and Java are both object-oriented programming languages, but still are the same. And they need someone senior because they need to move fast, and they need to, there's no time for this person to learn. How can you use this technology? And this is not necessarily something NASA is doing, maybe yes or maybe not, I don't know. But my point is how you can use this technology to differentiate or to assess how fast this person is going to be able to learn something like Java using .NET because it's object-oriented programming, compare someone that has been using JavaScript.
Yeah, I mean, in JavaScript and Java are two totally different languages in what you do. So no, we're not doing it. It's a good question, and it makes me think a lot about the possibilities of what we can do. But it's not something we're currently doing, but it's things we're looking at around tangential tasks or tangential skill sets that people should be looking at. So one of the things, of course, we've thought about as far as we're identifying the various career ladders and training path and things like that. If you are in a role and you're doing Python, let's say, but 75% of your coworkers that do the same role also know R, or also know Scala or SQL, but you don't have that, we could at least go back and say, look, you may want to go brush up or learn these languages because your other coworkers do that. So that's one way of at least identifying in how you might be able to upskill individual or let them know about their needs. Another thing you could possibly do is, at least from a job perspective, is set weights on what your requirements are. So is Java a higher weight than understanding the architecture, understanding the AWS, being able to implement? So those different categories, or those different, that list that you gave of what they're looking for, if Java is the top requirement with a weight of 1 and everything else has a weight of 0.5, then yeah, you may need to make sure that this person has Java. But if it's the other way around, and you have some time, then you, at least that they've got the other skills, but you need to learn Java. And yes, C# and .NET, and they're closely related in particular categories. So we could figure out ways to put that into the database, how well related they are to each other. And then Again, it would take some time and a whole lot of information to identify for those who have taken C# in the past or know C#, how many of them learned Java and how long did it take them to learn Java. But those are data questions, those are data problems, because trying to find that data in order to infer is the difficult thing.
But you mentioned something that I think it's very important, that put weight on what it's more important. Because if it's more important at the end of the day, having someone that will make the right architectural decisions, even though it's not the role of an architect, or is someone that it needs to, I don't know, work quite close with the product management team, or it's someone that has to go to work very closely with cloud engineers, and then you have a lot of other people working with Java, then Java at the end of the day, it's not the most important thing, maybe. And the reason why I'm saying this is because many times candidates might be rejected because they don't have Java, but they have all the other things. And many times the hiring manager, because of a lack of time, haven't had the time to think of, okay, what are the different ways on all these different aspects to build a job description that it's not just a listing of programming languages, and it's more about the whole job altogether. Of course, then you have to think of, it's easy to find Java software engineers, it's very hard, a lot of things in place in order to make the decision if it's worth considering a .NET guy if it's a Java role.
Right. Yeah, that you're right. There's a lot of things to consider, especially as a hiring manager, and looking at, can you use somebody? What's more important in your requirements, in your competencies that you're looking for? One of the things that we do within our job evaluation tool when we're going through the various competencies, I, as the hiring manager, have to identify this competency first, and then define how important is it to this role. Is it critical? Must have? Is it something or it's nice to have, or what is it that we're looking for? So that helps us to identify when we're looking at and inserting and qualifying the individual, when they're looking at that. If this is a critical and they must have it, then that person who doesn't have it would fall down in the ranking of that. But if it's only nice to have and they meet all the others, they may raise up. So that's one way you're doing it within your workflow and your process, to make sure that you're finding the people that meet, if not all of your needs, the needs that are more important to your role that you're looking for.
David, do you talk to companies or people outside of NASA that they are having this problem when it comes to hiring? Have you had conversations with people from outside NASA about this, or in a personal way or in a professional way?
Yeah, I have done various different conferences and talks, and have done some benchmarking with other organizations outside of NASA, both in the government and as well outside of the government, primarily around people analytics. How we run things, how I do analysis, how we develop technology to help support some of these workflows and processes. So I definitely have had many conversations about things, and find that this is a common concern among many organizations out there. How are they hiring the right people? How can they find the right people? And for many times, the right person may already be in their organization, they just don't know it. So how do we identify those too?
Fair enough. Have you seen any company doing something similar that you are doing?
There have been a few companies that I've seen have looked at trying to develop these types of capabilities within their platform, within their tool set. Nothing that I have worked in myself, and I'm sorry I can't remember some of the names right now. But there have been a few other folks. There's been a few other people that I've talked to that have worked on methodologies to identify skill sets and competencies within an individual. One of the things I've been trying to work on is to develop a custom natural language tagger of NASA-specific competencies. So as you have parts of speech tagging, noun, verb, adverb, things like that, can I develop some kind of custom tagger around identifying NASA-specific competencies within information I find a bit about the individual? I started that a couple of years ago, and there's been a couple of folks that I've seen that have worked something similar that looks very, very interesting. I'm looking now that with the more use of large language models that may kind of become overcome by events, you can generally put here's Here's my information. Can you find individuals that have that? I've seen now that large language models seem to answer a lot of these questions, but I can imagine still putting it within your pipeline, your indexing pipeline and your ingestion pipeline into the large language model architecture, that having some kind of natural language tagger could be beneficial. But there's still some testing we need to do on that.
Yeah, because it's a big problem that many companies have, how to hire the right people, and how it shouldn't be biased, how you should be doing the proper interviews, how you are reviewing all resumes when you have thousands of applications, and yeah, nowadays where you see so many laid off and so many people looking for work, and how they are going through the hiring process and going through hundreds of applications, it's hard for people to find a job, for companies to be able to see with whom they have to spend their time. And with so many changes, and you have done a lot of things during your career, I like how you say that this could be used for your career progression. It's like, here's where I am. What are my different options? If I choose this, what skills and capabilities and experience should I get in order to be able to achieve that job?
Yeah, and another aspect of that, as you were mentioning, came up to my mind, is as somebody fresh out of university or college or work, or really trying to get into the workforce. If there's somebody out there that they want to emulate, I would really like to be that person down the road. If we had this information all in a database like this, a graph database, so we could look at that person's career path. What did they do throughout their life? What kind of training did they take? What skill sets did they have? So now I know that if I want to do something similar to this individual, I can now, try to follow that path, or try to at least learn what they learned to maybe put me in a similar position. So it's a lot around mentoring and mentorship. How do I find somebody that maybe I want to mentor? Or that I want to mentor me? And what do they do? So you could plug this into your mentorship programs within companies to try to help individuals find the right persons to aid them in their career path.
And it's interesting what you say, because many times it has happened with my customers that they say, I want someone like him. And they show me the LinkedIn profile of this person that has been working with them for years. And they love that person because of all the different characteristics and aptitudes of that person. And then, of course, when you are looking for someone like that profile, you start seeing what has been their career path, what it is that they have, like what has been their formal academic formation, in what kind of companies they have worked, in what kind of roles, exposed in how you do that. But of course, when you're doing it manually, it takes a lot of time, and you have to be able to join those dots, those nodes in your mind, and have some experience in able to do that. But if system can do that, a software application can do that for you, you can move way faster, and you can be way more objective as well, because there's very well defined on how you are assessing each candidate, and it's not just because it worked at Google, and now then because that person worked at Google is what we need. That person might not be the person you need just because it worked at Google.
No, I totally agree, and it would definitely help, and it kind of helps to hopefully I would think it would make the process a little bit smoother. For somebody, if I wanted to find somebody somebody like me that I wanted to promote, that I wanted to follow my footsteps, let's say, as long as I knew their background, their career, I can get an understanding. Okay, they're kind of doing the same thing I'm doing. They got some of the same interests, and I think this person would fit well. But one of the biggest things I'm really looking for in individuals sometimes is their curiosity and their willingness to learn new things. And you don't see that a lot in resumes, or not. It's hard to pick it all out or LinkedIn profiles. But having that other information already taken care of for you, you can focus on those things in the interview and the questions and trying to get that information, rather than trying to first find out whether they have everything they need, and then spend the last 2 minutes and trying to figure out, do you have those hidden qualities that I'm looking for that don't show up in resumes, that really because I really want to find people that are curious. I don't like saying it can't be done. I think it can be done. It may not be, we just got to figure out how to do it a lot of times. So, and failure sometimes happens when you work in some of these technology things. You try things that doesn't work, but it doesn't mean you stop. You just, okay, let's go find the next way that might be able to do that. So those are the types of things you don't see in resumes, and that requires conversations. But in order to get those in order to have enough time for this conversation, you got to get rid of some of the other things, and hopefully these technologies can help you give you more time to figure out those things or find those things in individuals.
You have done so many different things over your career. You have progressed a lot. You have came back to study again and moving and progressing and so on. And now we have AI. And now we have all these things that we don't know how it's going to be the job of the future. Like, it's way more difficult to understand what's going to be your job in 5 to 10 years compared to when at least I started my career. It was way more easy to see a path. For someone that is graduating as a computer science, with a computer science degree, wanting to work in technology, what would be your advice?
Well, follow your passion first off. What are you passionate about? Computer science can do so many different things across the industry. So from a computer science degree, you could go into data analytics, data science. You could go into ML ops engineering. You could go into cloud computing or some type of architecture. So there's so many things that you can do. So what's your passion? Follow that passion and try to figure out the roadmap to get to that, to do the things you're looking for. Don't be afraid, again, of trying new things and testing out things. And again, it's okay to fail, but learn from that failure, learn from what you've done wrong, learn from what happened there, and improve upon it the next time. I would definitely, if anybody coming out and starting a new career, is find somebody that you respect and want to emulate and ask for advice. If you have an opportunity to ask questions of somebody more senior than you, don't hesitate to ask those questions. Always come prepared to ask questions, because they are a wealth of knowledge of some of the things they've done over their career. And when it comes to AI, or in this case, really the generative AI, large language models, things like that, I would say embrace it. You utilize it. Find the ways that you can add that into your workflow and pipeline. You're hearing a lot of things about generative AI in particular, where careers such as computer science are exposed. I mean, there was recently a post where AI is going to be able to do all your engineering, your computer engineering. So am I going to be out of a job? Well, not if you learn to embrace that and use it. I think at least right now, that we'll be able to use AI to help our workflow, make us more productive in what we do. I find myself when I do have the time to code and start back again and start working on some of this thing, I find going to some of these large language models and asking questions and figuring things out a lot faster. When I get error codes, I can go to Stack Overflow or go some other. A lot of times I just dump the code into a large language model and say, I'm getting this error. Can you help me figure this out? And it'll come back and says, here are the things you might want to look for. And more often than not, they pinpointed the problem, something that I just totally didn't see, and I'm able to fix it right away. Or other times I may get questions that I don't want to spend the time writing a SQL query. I'll just ask it, I need to pull this data out of these couple of databases and join them here on this particular, write me the SQL query, and it writes it in less than 5 seconds. I dump it into my management studio, and I get the answer, and I'm going for it. It's not that I couldn't have written it. I just didn't want to spend that extra time writing it. It made my work go faster. I could provide the answer to the person that asked me, and then I can go back to my other work.
That's great. Great, David. Last one is, if there's anything that I didn't ask that you would like to add?
No, I think it was a great conversation. I think we touched on a lot of different things. I want to, I guess, elaborate a little bit more on individuals as far as when they're working in this field. Like, don't be afraid to try new things. Try to expose yourself to new technologies and new capabilities. Always keep an eye out. This technology area changes so rapidly. I find myself reading more and more just because to keep up with the information. But definitely just focus on your passion, focus on what you're trying to really makes you happy, and then learn more about that. And how can you improve upon that by what you learn? How can you utilize technology to improve upon that, not only for you, but for the organization you're with? And I guess lastly, wherever you work, whatever you do, whatever you're trying to do, make sure you're happy at it. And then at the end of the day, when you finally are done with it, wherever you're at, that you leave that place better off than you left when you got there. That's a mark of somebody that, to me anyway, is trying to be better for not only themselves, but for those around them, and try to make the job and make the experience better for everybody around them.